It's been 2.5 months since Bernard L. Madoff was picked up and charged with what's believed to be the largest financial fraud in history. Yet we still don't know much more about the alleged $50 billion scam than what Madoff initially told the FBI agents who arrested him. There are still no indictments as federal prosecutors continue to unravel the case and to try and figure out exactly what happened and who all was involved. But the proof that it happened can be found in the ruined lives of thousands of victims. The one person who knows the most and is willing to talk is Harry Markopolos, the man who figured out Madoff's scheme before anyone else. He sat down with us for his only television interview. How many times did you send material to the SEC?
May 2000, October 2001, October, November, and December 2005, then again June 2007, and finally April 2008. So 5 separate SEC submissions.
And in spite of all of the things that you did, it still ended up in disaster.
There's nothing to be proud about in this case. I feel horrible about the result. It's been a total disaster for the victims.
In the glittering world of high finance, where power lunches shape empires and trust is currency, one man engineered a lie so colossal it would become legend. Bernard L. Madoff. The name alone sends shivers through the financial world. His deception wasn't just criminal, it was generational. This is the story of greed, betrayal, and a family empire that imploded under the weight of one man's secret. He started small. Bernie Madoff built his firm from scratch in 1960 with just $5,000, trading penny stocks from a makeshift office. But over the decades, he transformed that modest hustle into a towering financial powerhouse. A Wall Street oracle. A whispering god among investors, he promised consistent returns. Not flashy, just reliable. A steady 10 to 12% every year. Rain or shine. In a world of chaos, Bernie was calm. Controlled. Trustworthy. Too trustworthy. What they didn't know was that behind the quiet office in the Lipstick Building on 3rd Avenue was no secret formula, just a fraud. A Ponzi scheme so vast it siphoned $65 billion from thousands of clients. Their money? Long gone. Their dreams? Burned to ash.
He had the patina of being a respected citizen, one of the most successful businessmen in New York, and certainly one of the most powerful men on Wall Street. You would never suspect him of fraud, unless you knew the math.
So, I mean, you're like a math guy, right?
I've taken all the calculus courses from integral calculus to differential calculus, as well as linear algebra, and statistics, both normal and non-normal.
How long did it take you to figure out that there was something wrong?
It took me 5 minutes to know that it was a fraud. It took me another almost 4 hours of mathematical modeling to prove that it was a fraud.
What were the things that caught your attention?
It was the performance line. As we know, that markets go up and down, and his only went up. He had very few down months. Only 4% of the months were down months, and that would be equivalent to a baseball player in the major leagues batting .960 for a year. Clearly impossible. You would suspect cheating immediately.
Maybe he was just good.
No one's that good.
Any financial motive?
Yes. He was a competitor of mine in 2000 to 2004 while I was still in the industry. And when someone's competing on your playing field, who's a dirty player, you want him tossed off.
Letter to the SEC back in 2000, you're a little tentative. You say, look, I have no smoking gun.
In 2000, it was more theoretical. In 2001, it was a little bit more real. By 2005, I had 29 red flags that you just couldn't miss on. By 2005, the degree of certainty was approaching 100. The people I had trading relationships with and asked, did you have a trading relationship with Mr. Bernard Madoff? And they all said, no, we don't think he's for real.
Could you find anybody?
I found no one that ever traded with Mr. Madoff, and I traded with the largest equity derivatives.
Figured this out besides you?
I would say that hundreds of people suspected something was amiss with the Madoff operation. If you look at who the victims were not, you'll notice that the major firms on Wall Street had no money with Mr. Madoff.
I mean, you write this is the letter, I'm quoting from the letter to the Securities and Exchange Commission, red flag number 20. Madoff is suspected of being a fraud by some of the world's largest, most sophisticated financial services firms. And then you list some of the firms.
Yes, I do.
The biggest firms on Wall Street, and conversations with people high up in those firms.
That is correct. And the SEC ignored that.
Did they call any of these people?
All the SEC had to do was pick up the phone. They never did.
If you had executives at the biggest investment houses in Wall Street that knew something was wrong, why do you think they didn't go to the SEC?
Because people in glass houses don't throw stones, and self-regulation on Wall Street doesn't.
It was here that Bernie Madoff made some of his biggest deals with large investment firms that were willing to feed him billions of dollars of their clients' money to manage. And in return, Bernie Madoff agreed to pay these so-called feeder funds a fortune in annual fees. The largest of the feeder funds was the Fairfield Greenwich Group. How much money did Fairfield make off Bernie Madoff every year?
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
If you're a feeder fund, what are you supposed to do for those hundreds of millions of dollars?
You're supposed to identify the world's best hedge fund managers and invest only in them, and you're supposed to make sure they're not running Ponzi schemes.
The real steroids here were the feeder funds. That's what made it an international Ponzi scheme.
Position, portfolio stress testing, risk management, asset verification. Do you think that really happened?
No, we know it didn't happen because we know all they did was turn the money over to Bernie Madoff, and they did that for 20 years.
They did nothing.
They essentially did nothing except lose their investors' money and enjoy very luxurious lifestyles from the money they took.
The Madoffs weren't just a firm, they were a dynasty. Ruth, Bernie's high school sweetheart, stood by his side for over 5 decades. His sons, Mark and Andrew, worked at the legitimate side of the business, the trading arm, operating parallel to their father's mysterious investment advisory division. They claimed ignorance. No access to the books. No idea what Bernie was really doing behind closed doors, but when the empire crumbled in December 2008, and Bernie confessed everything, the fallout wasn't just financial, it was biblical.
Wall Street in shreds, the watchdogs fast asleep. Bonus-stuffed executives laughing all the way out of the busted banks. It's been some year. Oh, and we left out the Ponzi scheme of Ponzi schemes. Bernard Madoff's untidy little business that bilked thousands of people out of billions of dollars. While the mastermind is doing 150 years in prison, the big question is, where did all the money go? Irving Picard, the court-appointed trustee, the liquidator, is searching for the billions that disappeared and trying to recover as much as possible from Madoff's remaining assets. It's a daunting and thankless task. For while he's suing whoever he can on behalf of the victims, he's also suing many of the victims, those who he says benefited and should have known they were investing in a house of cards. Mr. Picard and his chief counsel, David Sheehan, have been largely silent about the details of the recovery until tonight. Last November, just before the whole thing collapsed, Bernard Madoff sent out statements to his clients. How much were they told they were worth?
About $64.8 billion.
So the statements were total lies.
Yes, absolutely.
Money, do you think, went into the whole scheme?
I'd say about 36 billion, and about 18 of it went out before the collapse, and 18 of it's just missing. And that $18 billion is what we're trying to get back.
As far as you've been able to find out, was he ever legitimate?
No, it was never legitimate. And I think to be told the truth, which he's not capable of, he would then say, yes, I started out as a crook, and I ended up as a crook. Account at BLMIS, like a personal piggy bank.
Of all the people that should have known, his brother and his sons who worked under the same roof with him should have known.
One would think so.
Yes.
Did they know?
My belief is, yes, they knew, and would have to have known what was going on, given their own personal transactions, the longevity of what was happening, and their responsibilities as officers of the company. If you were those sons, and you knew what you knew today about where all that money came from, wouldn't you be embarrassed to keep that money? They should give it all back. And if they don't give it all back, I think we have an obligation to go get it and take it all back.
Madoff. It is a name that will live in infamy. It's been nearly 3 years since Bernard Madoff confessed to running a $65 billion Ponzi scheme, the largest financial fraud in history. Thousands of trusting clients who felt safe investing with a financial genius were swindled. He hadn't invested a penny. While Madoff is serving 150 years in prison, his family has had to deal with the consequences of his crimes. His wife Ruth divested of most of her great wealth and derided by a suspicious world. Their son Mark dead, driven to suicide by shame and accusations of guilt. Their other son Andrew isolated, trying to live with the disgrace. Are they innocent or were they willing partners? For the first time since Bernie Madoff's arrest, his son Andrew and wife Ruth speak out about crime, punishment, and the shame of being a Madoff. It's a tough name to live with.
It sure is.
Ruth Madoff, you feel the shame?
Of course I feel the shame. I could barely walk down the street without worrying about people recognizing me. He called from the office and said, "I'm coming home with the boys. I have something to talk about." He came in, we went into a room, 4 of us, and he said, "I have a confession to make. I've been running a Ponzi scheme." He said $50 billion.
He said, "Everything I've been doing is all a big lie." He said, the business is a Ponzi scheme, and firm is completely insolvent, and I'm broke. And then he just started sobbing, and I was shocked. I felt like my head exploded. I mean, I don't think if he had told me he was an alien, I could have been more surprised. He said that the firm had liabilities of $50 billion. It never occurred to me that his business had anything like that anything like that under management. It was shocking.
Your mother, what was her reaction?
She looked shocked. She asked, "What's a Ponzi scheme?" It was her first question. She didn't even understand that. I think it was me who answered and said that it means that it's all fake, that Dad's, he's not been doing what he says he's been doing. And he followed that up and said, "Yes, I've been lying to all of you all of these years. I've been lying to everybody. I've been lying to myself," he said.
And your brother?
My brother was trembling with rage. He was absolutely furious. Mark was the first one to stand up and said, "I'm out of here." And he stormed out of the room. And I immediately followed him and walked out.
Bernie Madoff sat his sons down and said it plainly, it's all one big lie. He asked for 24 hours to get his affairs in order. Instead, his sons called the FBI. Bernie was arrested the next day, charged, shackled, and eventually sentenced to 150 years in prison. But the headlines didn't stop there. Ruth became a public enemy. Her assets, homes, jewelry, even Bernie's slippers, were seized. She was allowed to keep $2.5 million. But sympathy? None. Her neighbors turned their backs. She was harassed on subways, hounded by reporters. She lost everything, except her name.
Really hard for people to believe that you didn't know, that you must have known.
I can't explain it. I mean, I trusted him. Why would it ever occur to me that it wasn't legal? The business was, his reputation was almost legendary. Why would I ever think that there was something sinister going on?
You must have been curious about why the 17th floor was such a secret place. When you or Mark asked him about his end of the business, what did he say?
It was always a very similar response, is you guys have your business to worry about and let me worry about my business. And the conversation would end there.
But people say, look, there's no way these kids could not have, at the very least, suspected something was going on.
Well,
Keep in mind, these were completely separate businesses. We were executing hundreds of thousands of transactions a day, and that kept all of us incredibly busy. And it just didn't occur to me that he could be involved in any kind of criminal activity.
Her sons. Worse. Mark and Andrew were slapped with lawsuits, accused of profiting from the scam, knowingly or not. Every dollar they ever earned was now suspect. Every friend a potential accuser. I'll never speak to my father again. What he did. It's unforgivable. The weight was unbearable. Mark Madoff became consumed by media coverage. He'd spend hours reading every article, every blog post. It spiraled. On the second anniversary of Bernie's arrest, Mark hanged himself in his Manhattan apartment. His 2-year-old son was sleeping in the next room.
The legitimacy of the trading business offered protection to what your father was doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That he was using you and your brother?
Absolutely. It was one of the hardest things to come to grips with in trying to get my head around this, was that feeling that I had been used almost as a human shield by him. It's unforgivable. No.
The sheer scale of Bernard Madoff's Ponzi scheme shocked the world. Thousands of individuals, charities, and funds that on paper were worth a total of $65 billion were wiped out. What's more, some of his closest friends and family who had trusted him with their life savings faced ruin.
The widow and the survivor. After Mark's suicide, Ruth finally cut Bernie off. No more visits. No more calls. It was too late for redemption. But maybe. Not too late for reconciliation, with her remaining son, Andrew, battling cancer, opened up to the press. He didn't ask for sympathy. He wanted clarity. Closure. He insisted he never knew. That he was just another victim, of his father's lies, of the public scorn, and of a justice system hungry for retribution. He died in 2014. Cancer claimed what stress hadn't already.
Remorse, was there?
Yes, there was
Guilt,
remorse.
or was it sort of self-pity?
I think in a way he was relieved at the beginning that he was finished.
But you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, why? You could have been a perfectly comfortable, even wealthy family.
Without question.
Without this.
I don't understand it. It's hard for me to say this, but I don't think the money was the part of it. I think he got stuck. That's what he said. The bookkeeper. I was the receptionist. I worked for Bernie in 1961 when I graduated from college. And I left in 1963 when Mark was born, and then Andy, and I was a stay-at-home mom all those years. And later on, when the boys started to work there, we lived within walking distance, and I had an office there where I took care of decorating things and house things and boat bills and managing those things. But I was never the bookkeeper after 1963.
Probably a majority of people can't believe that you can live with someone for 50 years and not know.
It's hard for me to believe, too.
Had you known, would you have turned him in?
I'm glad I didn't. It would have been tough, but I would have left. Whether I turned him in or not, I don't know. I'd like to think I would have, but I couldn't say. I'm being completely honest with you.
8 former employees were charged, some convicted. But no other family member was ever criminally indicted. And still, people ask, was there a stash? A hidden fortune? A buried vault of cash? No one's ever found it. Bernie took the real secret with him. He died in prison in 2021.
There's a public perception, and I'm sure you've heard it, that there's got to be a stash somewhere. You know,
I've heard it. I've heard it.
That Bernie Madoff hid it somewhere, and that you know about it,
I wish they'd find it and give it all back.
You both know about it.
My understanding of a Ponzi scheme is that when it's over, there's nothing left, and I certainly don't know of a stash anywhere.
How much are you worth as we speak?
Well, I was fortunate over the years running the business that Mark and I ran that generated many millions of dollars in profits and enabled my brother and I both to live a comfortable lifestyle.
You haven't answered the question.
I made, in good years, several $1,000,000. You know, my life at this point is an open book. The details of my financial past have been laid bare completely in the lawsuit against me. I haven't enjoyed it, but that's the reality that I live in.
Do you fear ending up broke?
I think that it's a very real possibility. What he did to thousands of other people, destroyed their lives. I'll never understand it, and I'll never forgive him for it, and I'll never speak to him again.
In the end, the house of Madoff didn't just collapse. It burned to the ground, and took the family with it. The name Madoff will forever be etched in financial infamy. A cautionary tale of unchecked greed, blind loyalty, and the unbearable cost of deception. If you find this documentary helpful, don't forget to like and drop your comment, and also hit the subscribe button. See you in my next video.